At the start of this year, I had an intro for this video written, where I said something along the lines of 2025 has been one of the worst years for gaming in recent memory. But that is so wrong, because Will AAA completely blundered and completely squandered things. Despite that, the indie scene showed up and made sure this year was amazing. So, without further ado, let's talk about the best games of 2025. And we're starting this list with a very controversial pick, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Because, I'll be entirely honest, the only reason this game made this list is because the only other games I played in 2025 that are below it were drastically worse. I feel incredibly similarly towards Donkey Kong Bonanza as I do towards Tears of the Kingdom, which may be surprising, because when Tears of the Kingdom released, I was incredibly positive towards it, but I've become incredibly jaded towards that game over time. The difference is, Donkey Kong Bonanza, I saw its cracks very quickly. And it genuinely worries me for the future of Nintendo, because this is two of their biggest releases, relatively close to each other, that have had almost the exact same problem. And that's, as weird as it sounds, too much freedom. Both games have the same issue of the game is so free that that freedom results in almost every single problem having the same handful of solutions, and that is the same case as Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe you change the end-all be-all solution a tiny bit, but in Tears of the Kingdom, realistically, Ultra Hand, Recall, Ascend solves almost every single puzzle. And in Donkey Kong, you can just dig around it. Like, oh, platforming challenge you don't want to do? Build a bridge or dig around it. Enemy you don't want to fight? Dig around it. Oh, banana that's too hard to get? You literally don't need it. Almost everything in this game is optional, which is really cool and great. The problem is, it's additionally extra optional, since 9 out of 10 things in this game can be solved by just digging. Which sucks, because when I actually got to do proper challenging platforming that I couldn't just solve by doing 1 or 2 different things repeatedly, I had a blast. The actual movement and controls of Donkey Kong feel fantastic. But the problem is, I don't get to use them unless I'm forcefully restricting myself from engaging with opportunities and mechanics the game gave me. And I'm sorry, I do not like it when I need to put a self-imposed challenge or restriction on it to enjoy a game. That should not be something that is so devastating and ruining that I need to actively ban myself from using a mechanic. A core gameplay mechanic, at that. Next up on the chopping block is Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, a game that I have truly wanted to see this franchise try. It is a FNAF Origins title of sorts, and while it's not the Fredbear's game everyone's wanted, seeing the franchise at its earliest point in its history within the universe is incredibly intriguing and had so many great reveals. And while I've seen some people complain that they're retcons, is anything a retcon in a story where they've told us almost nothing? And like 90% of our story is things we have made up and are just guessing? Point being, I like the game, and I think it's actually a really solid entry in the series. Would I recommend it to anyone who isn't already an existing fan of the franchise? No. Run while you still can. Racing in at number 8 is Mario Kart World, a game that, honestly, is overhated. It is really fun when you are playing it explicitly in the way Nintendo actively does not want you doing. Also known as ignoring the other missions existing and playing exclusively in versus mode without random selected and just picking courses for 3-lap track variations. Which also means unless you're playing on custom servers hosted on stuff like the Mario Kart World Discord, you're almost exclusively restricted to local play because you cannot just go online and play with random people unless you want to race in a straight line. Look, Mario Kart World is flawed. It is incredibly flawed. It has so many issues, and is not even close to worth the price. However, the trick system is incredibly fun, rewarding to learn, and super satisfying. Genuinely, I love it. And the actual tracks themselves, when you are playing on the 3-lap variants, are amazing. Some of my favorites in the whole series. But it really is held back by so many flaws. And honestly, despite me just saying that the new tracks are some of my favorites, a lackluster track selection, I'm sorry. 30 tracks is the shortest list out of any modern Mario Kart game. And I don't need anywhere close to the amount of tracks that 8 has. However, there literally aren't enough tracks for the 8 Grand Prix in the game. 2 of the Grand Prix have duplicate tracks because there are not enough tracks in the game for 8 Grand Prix. That should prove the game needs like 2 more tracks. And I know I'm being really negative, but genuinely, what is there when you are playing the game wrong is incredibly fun. But as I said earlier in this video with Donkey Kong, I do not feel that I should need to put self-imposed restrictions on a game to enjoy it. And there's a difference between, oh, I want to try doing a self-imposed challenge because I love this game and I want to do it in a unique way, compared to something like this or Donkey Kong, where for me to just generally enjoy the game, I have to go out of my way to play it wrong. That is something that really hurts the game, and I'm more willing to forgive this over Donkey Kong because I prefer what is there looking past that issue much more than with it, but both games suffer that exact same issue. Also, like, I didn't mention free roam. It is just empty. I feel like half of the features in this game are just there so they can say, we have over 200 courses. Technically. We have 300 missions. Technically. Because most of them are repeats. Again, I like what is there, but a lot of it feels deceptive or like fluff. But when there is actual content, the actual races and actual controls feel fantastic. But nowhere near as fantastic as a game I have waited a decade hoping it would release. That's right, number 7 is Pokemon Legends ZA. Am I biased? Absolutely. My first ever Pokemon games were X and Y. I have a massive soft spot for the Kalos region, and half of this game is nostalgia bait. I will be fully honest there. But it's nostalgia bait for a game I love. So I will eat it up. And wrap that in a really solid Pokemon game, and yeah, I love it. The characters are great. The actual combat and catching Pokemon is really fun and reminds me a little bit of Xenoblade 2. And honestly, will I rather explore the entirety of the Kalos region? Lumiose feels a lot more open and bigger than I would have expected going in. Though, the amount of basically invisible walls is kind of insane to me. And that's before mentioning the Rogue Mega Evolution Pokemon. They are really fun boss battles that were genuinely somewhat challenging. And I thoroughly enjoyed Genuinely, this game has so many parts of it that I genuinely do love, and a lot that's easily blown up by nostalgia. And I genuinely do love what this game has to offer. I can fully see why a lot of people don't care for it or find the game weak, but this is one of those cases where it is probably one of the closest things I will ever get to a Pokemon game tailor-made for me, which is one of the reasons I adore it. It's fantastic and a great inclusion in the Pokemon series. And going from one fantastic addition to another, we have Doom: The Dark Ages. Let me start off with just saying, it's a modern Doom game. It is what you expect to get out of this franchise. And by no means is that a bad thing, because it does substantially change up the gameplay formula while still staying true to its predecessors, which is no easy feat. On top of that, Doom: The Dark Ages manages to keep the player feeling stronger than ever than in any of the prior games, while still keeping that same level of difficulty. And a big part of that is, on top of the gunplay just being generally fantastic as always, the addition of the shield and the parry mechanics and all that comes with it is amazing. It is the reason Dark Ages is easily my favorite Doom game, because not only is it fantastic and a great addition to the series, parries are so satisfying to land, or throwing it to cut through hordes of enemies. It ends up adding so much extra depth to an already fantastic combat system. And that's before talking about the things that mix it up. They gave you a dragon! Which feels great to control. Nowhere near as great as your usual arsenal, but for additional sections of gameplay to add some variety, it's a great addition. The same can be said for the Atlan mech, which I care for a lot less, but again, as a thing to just help add some gameplay variety to the game, I think it works wonders. And the story, while nothing spectacular, has some fantastic moments, especially one near the end that had me at the edge of my seat. Doom: The Dark Ages is an amazing entry within its series, and I cannot wait to see what's to come from the Doom series. And another series I am excited to see a new entry in this year is Kirby, specifically Kirby Air Riders. It's a Sakurai game, of course it made the list. He is a master class artist when it comes to making video games. And honestly, I do think this and the games at 6 and 7 could honestly be switched around pretty freely. They're all really good. It really is, any of these could be in the top 5. It kinda just depends on my mood. I just haven't had as much time to sink my teeth into it. There's still a lot for me to do in Kirby Air Riders compared to the other games where, well, there's stuff I still can do. I can still come back and play those games. I've played them a good amount and done everything I have wanted to do in them. Kirby Air Riders is still very new, which makes it a lot harder to judge in a video like this, because I still have so much to do, so much to learn. I have played every track, I've completed the story, I've played all of the cool game modes, but there's so much to learn in a game with so many complex mechanics. It's a lot harder to judge than a game I've had months to play. And I know it probably sounds weird to hear me say that a game with literally 2 buttons is complicated. It actually is. There is a lot of depth to a game like Kirby Air Riders. It is deceptively simple. And that's fantastic. It's super easy to get into. It's super easy to learn, but there is a lot beneath the surface. And that's what I love about Sakurai games. If you want to spend the time, sink your teeth in, and get really good at the game, you can. But you can still have a ton of fun while just picking it up and not really learning the in-depth mechanics. It's especially great for a game like this where anyone can play it. I can hand a controller to someone who isn't super familiar with games and tell them the controls and they'll understand. If you do that with a lot of other games, they will get lost very quickly. But now we're jumping to a take on an old classic in Last Commands DLC B-side. And while DLCs are always awkward for if I include them, I generally stand by the rule of thumb. If it is a separate campaign and not stuff that is additive to what is already in the base game, then I think it's fair to count. And in the case of B-side, it is a continuation of the base game that resets your inventory and effectively acts as a new game that picks up where the last one left off, including in terms of difficulty. Which is fantastic because that means all gloves are off. The third act of the base game is my favorite part of that, because it is not afraid to show what it had been hiding the whole time and revealing its true colors. And because of that, the DLC starts by immediately throwing that at you and using it to its advantage the whole time. It is aware that you already know what is beneath the surface of this story, and it is going to use that to its advantage to throw some of the most insane and coolest ideas I have seen from a game like this. Seriously, it is impressive. I would love to show you to try to convince you to play this game. But frankly, if you know, it's going to ruin it. So instead, I'm just going to talk about the basics, since genuinely this is a game worth going into absolutely blind. The self-described Snake bullet hell is a fantastic experience. As someone who loves bullet hells, as someone who has casually enjoyed Snake, it is amazing. The actual bullet patterns are very fair and I think well designed. And the actual controls feel fantastic. And I love the fact that you are not only forced to constantly be on the move because of its Snake inspiration, but that also means you can't just hide in a corner or wait out attacks in a safe spot, since you need to be going for those pieces to get longer. And that also adds an interesting dichotomy of, I am bigger, so I can deal more damage, but I also have a bigger hitbox. And that is an incredibly interesting dichotomy that you have to constantly be managing in the middle of a bullet hell boss fight. But before we continue on to the top 3, I would first like to go through a small handful of honorable mentions, games that probably would have made the list if I had actually played them. The first one on here being the contentious Monster Hunter Wilds. I adore Monster Hunter World and thoroughly enjoyed Rise, and I am fairly confident I would love Wilds. Now, the reason this game is generally contentious and has consistently had mixed or negative reviews on sites like Steam is mostly because the game does not function on most devices. But from what I've heard, those who were actually able to run the game enjoyed it. The problem is, the game is horrifically optimized to this day. The next honorable mention is Elden Ring Night Rain. The game looks fantastic. I am a massive fan of FromSoft's catalog, and from what I've seen, I think it's an interesting take on the Soulsborne formula. And I would love to give this game a shot. I just would like to play a game like this with an actual party, and that's the big thing that's held me back from playing it, especially since the game launched with only single-player and 3-player options. This is the type of game I would have loved to duo, and while that's now a feature, the lack of that kind of just made me play Elden Ring again with a friend using a co-op mod when it launched. So, works out. And I'm sure I'll play Night Rain eventually, and I'm sure I'll probably love it. But that's all I can say for now. Next up is Deadpool VR, a game that genuinely I'm surprised exists, but considering how much I was smirking just at the writing in the trailer, I'm fairly certain is gonna be a blast once I finally get around to it. That and the combat looks insanely chaotic and really fun. And the last honorable mention of today's video is Haste. I played the demo when it came out, I had a blast, but for some reason, I just never got around to picking the game up. And I'm almost certain it's going to be insanely fun, because the demo is fantastic. It's really fast, it's really fun. I can't say much more because the demo is relatively bare bones, and I know the full game added so much more, and I really need to get around to Haste at some point. But without further ado, number 3 is Hollow Knight Silksong. And where to start? Hollow Knight Silksong is a fantastic sequel to an already amazing game. Would I put it above Hollow Knight is a different question, because this game is amazing and also has some flaws that were not in the original. So let me start with saying, I played Silksong with a mod. Specifically, this specific boss retry mod. And that is for a reason I am about to get into. However, I just want to make it clear, I did use a quality of life mod. Because the runbacks in this game are so atrocious, it genuinely prevents this game from getting the silver medal. Especially the boss at the end of the Biowater and the Last Judge are genuinely atrocious. Which sucks, because runbacks aside, Last Judge is a genuinely fun and well-designed boss. It just happened to be the straw that broke the camel's back. But aside from that one tiny, glaring flaw, the actual exploration and combat in this game is amazing. Way better than the original. And that's saying something, because Hollow Knight is already a fantastic game. I adore almost every single change that Silksong made, and if you're not a fan of Hornet's playstyle, don't worry, there's a ton of options to the point where you can even just effectively play as the knight. And the visuals are absolutely stunning. I generally don't talk about them, but God, this game looks gorgeous. I thought Hollow Knight looked good, and this makes that game look bad. That is how stunning Silksong is. Genuinely, aside from the runbacks, which I am amazed passed to the full release, everything about Silksong is an improvement on its predecessor, which was already one of the best Metroidvanias out there. And if we want to talk about another game that improved on its predecessor in every single way, we have Deltarune. I am not kidding. I cannot believe that I'm actually getting to include Deltarune in a video like this, because I have been waiting since Chapter 1 for this game to release, and it is admittedly in a weird state to if I should include in a video like this, as the full game is technically not out, but actual answer, not going to include it in future years, but this is the year the full game, in quotes, released, within being purchasable and not being considered an early access game or a demo. And I love Deltarune. While I know a lot of people prefer Undertale to its spiritual successor / pseudo-sequel, I am not one of those people. While I love the fact that Undertale lets you make all these choices, I have no issue with Deltarune not doing that, especially since that is very clearly the intention and the point of the story. And that's before getting into the actual gameplay. The puzzles are more elaborate and more interesting, and the combat is so much more fluid and more just feels better. I don't have a good way to put it, as I'm not an expert in the field, but the way Deltarune controls just feels so much nicer than Undertale. And that's not to diss Undertale. I think it's a fantastic game. It just happens that as Toby Fox has made more and more games, he's become a greater and greater storyteller, a greater and greater programmer, a greater and greater musician. Genuinely, I adore Deltarune because it improves upon Undertale, a game I already love. in every conceivable facet. I adore this game and cannot wait to see what comes next from everybody that has worked on it. But to absolutely nobody's surprise, my number one, the best game of 2025 is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody. I am recording this before the Game Awards. I scripted part of this before even the nominees were announced, and I am fairly confident that this game won Game of the Year. I would be amazed if anything else did, because this whole year, from the moment this game released, I knew it was a battle for second place, because it is incredibly rare to see a masterpiece in every sense of the word. Its story, which I will not delve into here, pulls off the kinds of twists and turns I have only seen done in games like Xenoblade Chronicles. Gameplay clearly inspired by Persona 5, and at that manages to improve upon it, which is insanely impressive, considering it's my favorite game of all time. Yet, despite its clear inspirations, Expedition 33 manages to carve a path of its own, with a story that's unique yet inspired, gameplay that improves upon that which came before, and which will hopefully lay the groundwork for those who come after. And all of the party members are not only highly customizable, but all equally useful and equally valid. I could see almost any combination of the party working as a valid strategy and a viable team comp, which is insanely rare to see in a party-based RPG. And the music is genuinely phenomenal. The majority of the tracks in the game, I don't think I'd listen to them outside of the game like a lot of people, within the context of it, add so much to the environments or the moments in the story, and the tracks that I would are absolutely amazing. Top that off with a highly customizable badge-like system, akin to that of the classic Paper Mario games, and it shines like no other RPG. There is absolutely no way I can give justice to this game in a short section within a top 10 video, especially without delving into spoilers. That's how fantastic Expedition 33 is. I am so incredibly excited to see not only this game's future, but the future of Sandfall Interactive. 2025 was an amazing year for gaming, and I really do hope that despite all of the turbulence that has been seen, especially by the AAA industry, that 2026 manages to be just as great, especially with the help of indie devs. Of course, those are just my thoughts. What are yours? What's your game of the year? I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!